Paulie here on the Latino slant. Been wanting to hit this subject matter for some time. In other iterations, we have talked about this within the Latino community, within Black and Brown communities, and American community as a general phenomenon, and that is the use of the N word out of the African American community, which, depending on who you talk to, is is fine in regards to what is the context, what's happening, who's it with. Context is everything. And then there's people who are like, nope, you absolutely cannot say it, use it, speak it, think it. But we can. We as African Americans can. So I think when I saw this opinion piece, I'm like, okay, this is good to discuss here on the Latino slant because we don't just talk about movies and television reviews. We like to talk about some of these issues. And what I'm going to do is bring up this opinion piece, kind of pop around from the beginning to the end. It is at the Daily Cella's Substack, which is a paywall, which I do recommend supporting. So check them out. I'll have the link in it as well. But let's go to it right now, and I'll pop in and out as far as just discussing, giving my 2 cents. The Daily Chella opinion: time for Latinos to stop saying the N word. Oh, let me just tell you right now, in this in this talk right now, guys, I am going to use the N word in regards to what we're saying here. And you can discuss, you can comment if you're offended. Listen, this is not it's not a personal, you'll see what I mean. All right. So let's just stop the disclaimer and let's get to it. This is by Marcos Cabrera. And he says it's time for Latinos to stop saying the N word. There's no explanation on how we got to this point. Like everything related to Black and Brown identity, it's a complex web. And I think this is the rapper Fat Joe. I believe it is. I believe it is. Latino parents don't want to be regular parents. We want to be cool parents. A lot of us grew up listening to raunchy music at an early age. By that notion, we give our own kids, a pass to listen to music with cuss words and adult themes. We tell ourselves, I was listening to Live Crew in sixth grade, and I turned out okay. We then turned up the volume on the way up to drop our kids off at school. That part is not why I'm here to discuss. Vibe out with your kids, listen to what you want. If you're up early and taking your kids to school, you probably did turn out okay. Great point, Marcos. What we as Latino parents need to stop doing is being lazy and take the final step when listening to music with our kids. If we're with our kids vibing to a song and the singer rapper suddenly uses the N word, it's our duty to hit pause, turn to our kids, and share some variation of this important message. I know you like the music, so do I, but when we sing along, we can't say the N word. That word is off limits to us Latinos. Okay, well, interesting. I would, in as a whole, agree with what Marcos is saying because he's talking about parenting. And he even says, if you're up early and taking your kids to school, odds are you turned out okay as a person, which I think is a great point. And then he doubles down on kind of setting practicing principles and guidelines to a manner of living in raising your kids. I love that as well. I believe that it is completely up to the parents. Uh, Whatever those uh, principles and values are taught in that home, that's it. That's what mom and that's what dad set down for the children. Um, and I really I'm really with that. So I would say I would say that even having these types of discussions is wonderful, as well as other types of issues in the home, from religion to sex, etc., etc. So I can't really. I'm not a parent, and I can't really knock another parent for what they do, especially if they're trying to uh, have a positive influence on their children. It's always tougher when you see a negative influence on children. So yeah, I think that's an interesting one too, because you are trying to be cool and you're listening to this music and it has themes from from just adult themes to language. This is part of this pop culture that doesn't necessarily have the same values as you, and that's another thing. So you're up against a an avalanche at times, it seems, especially with social media. So that's what I'm going to say on that. Let's get back to this piece. It's a difficult task because we want to be cool parents. A lot of us grew up at a time when it was acceptable to see Latino artists use that word. For my era, listening to Latino rappers like Cypress Hill, Fat Joe, and the Beatnuts freely and openly use that word in their music made the word seem cool and unfortunately accessible. I'm not here to analyze why those particular artists felt licensed to say it. From my understanding, each of the aforementioned artists comes from Afro Latino backgrounds. That suggests the word's usage was acceptable for them. Some folks would argue it's still unacceptable. That's not my point. My point is simple. There's a lot of trauma and healing that needs resolution within our Black and Brown communities. Part of the trauma is due to Latino parents' failure to enforce zero tolerance policies around our kids' use of the N word. Okay, so interesting, right? Because we know that rap music is so and just music in general, pop music is so influential now with social media. And he uses a with Cypress Hill, it was my first time, I believe, maybe NWA. But when I saw Latinos using the N-word in that song, as you know, that infamous line, because a nigga like me is going insane, insane in the membrane. Everyone sang that line. Everyone danced to that line. Everyone danced to that song. It was a number one song for weeks. It was a massive hit. The influence hit everywhere. And like rap did at first with white communities in the 80s and then going into the 90s, it was a shocker for people to see, white kids, mimicking and sounding, kind of picking up some of the isms of the hip hop culture, the hip hop community. Some people liked it, some people didn't. Um, it's really inescapable, that influence. And it's almost as if you can try. I again, like I'm not even talking as a parent. You can try to point things out, but if the context is, well, Be Real and Sendog and all those guys are Afro Latinos and they grew up in a mixed race, home and in barrio, that their use of language is on the streets was always this like fluid flowing of Spanish and English and hood vernacular. How can you not use that word? How in that word in context isn't how we use it to be discriminate against someone who's African American, and it's actually the opposite. It also reminds me of gringos and black people that grew up in the barrio that pick up on Chicanoisms. It's the same kind of cultural exchange. Obviously, not the same explosive word, but still, can if someone's cool and like within the culture, say those words like mojado or wetback. words are very powerful. So I just think it's interesting because you know when a record company or the mainstream corporations push it out so much, the influence is inescapable. That's one thing. But then, where is it organically in the hood, in the streets? Who can say it? Who cannot say it? Um, Depending on who you talk to, as I said at the beginning of this video, it's uh, it's a uh, it's a mixed bag. Okay, let's continue. Do do do. This is good stuff, man. I always love uh, hitting on these topics. Okay. There's no one explanation how we got to this point. Like everything else related to black and brown identity, it's a complex web. I can only share my personal observation as a Latino parent who has raised a very young child who has raised very young children during the pandemic. Now, I'm going to jump because it talks about raising the kids in the pandemic and for the most part I agree, but I want to get to he uses as an example of 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 this situation. I was recently reminded by the importance of teaching our Latino children not to say the N word at a school assembly. Brandon Brown, CEO of the company Schoolyard Rap, has toured the country performing and conducting workshops specifically aimed at teaching children about the contributions of Black and Latinos to American society. One of his lessons, in the form of a rap song, includes a very deliberate and direct instruction for Latinos on usage of the N word. So it's a school assembly, and he's teaching, hey, Latinos don't use the N word, and here's why. And he says, I don't care if rappers say it; it's not okay. All right. So he went out first to identify, I would assume, African American rappers saying that's not cool. Don't be using it. Then he goes on to say, if you ain't black, don't say Nigga. I don't even like it when we use that word, but I get how we flipped it from a negative. But now different ethnicities are using that word. We feel cool, hood connected, or accepted. Here's where I'll push back the most because it is not a new phenomenon. It is not a new cultural interaction. This has been going on for decades upon decades, as far as what I talked about is that dominant influence in a community where it's majority black or majority brown and some white, as to how kids talk with each other, right? School assemblies are great, but usually it's like, we're going to just keep doing our own thing. Um, and again, is it a negative within those kids talking to each other, within those group of friends that are mixed? If it's a negative in a negative tone and context, then of course it's. I think we're thinking of like uh, something a little differently. But here, if we're talking if we're talking kids growing up together that are of mixed backgrounds in a barrio, in a hood, I just think it's completely different, and I think their positive means something different, as is being a part of a gang, right? They're trying to flip their negative life. Maybe they don't have a father. Maybe they have or any parents. They're trying to find some meaning in their lives, and they bond with other kids on the street. Well, that's part of all this, man. That's a part of all this. Um, yeah, okay. I think that's a good little bit of a pushback. Is that he gets how we flipped it from a negative, but now other different ethnicities are using the word, and I'd say those other ethnicities have been part of barrio and hood communities since day one. So, and I know plenty of people who are from different hoods that aren't uh, African American per se, but that grew up in that world that use that word and that are in within the context, it's not, this racist connotation. Does that make sense? Now, I know I have several African American, subscribers and followers. Does that make sense? I think I'm making sense to you guys. If I'm not, if I'm totally off point, let me know. But in my experience and what I've seen and heard, it's completely different. So, let's finish up here. And I really thank you guys for being here. Make sure you guys are subscribed. I would appreciate it. He understands how young Latinos have become comfortable using the word for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's black friends who have given them the pass. Maybe it's a popular culture. However, Brown doesn't excuse the word amongst non blacks, the usage of the word not amongst non blacks. Brown is doing the work for his black community, which post pandemic is struggling to reclaim a word that has traumatized them for generations. As noble as Brown efforts are, it shouldn't be left to the victims to do the heavy lifting in pursuit of basic dignity and respect. Latino parents, let's do our part to help our black brothers and sisters, and more importantly, their children, feel safe around us. When it comes to the N word, let's hit pause, take a moment, explain to our kids why that word is off limits to us Latinos now and forevermore. That will help us make cool parents. Well, I would say, as a whole, on the parent tip, I'm definitely with Marcos's opinion here. I would say that it shouldn't be left to the victims to do the heavy lifting of basic dignity and respect. You know, they just eh, there's example after example where they continue to use the word in a positive variation in their community, in their language. I mean, I just heard an female African American panel of nerds talking about whatever said TV show using that word, and it's in the free flow of exchange. Um, so you have that, but who's to say? So if this word then is banned from non-African Americans, can't use it. Cannot use it. Don't say it. Is that not a form of policing freedom of expression? We often push back on the word Latinx. Some people find it highly offensive, but I wouldn't tell someone not to use it. So, context, words, everything has meaning. It's very powerful, and I get it. I get it. I wanted to bring it up, and now I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your comments and get on back to me. I will have a link to this opinion piece. Great job, Marcos. Great job, the Daily Cella. And wherever you're at, make sure your slant is fuerte. Gracias.